Hello there, kia ora. I'm starting to suspect, just a little bit, that maybe the coalition don't like to let people make their own decisions. On the surface level, there's been actions like forcing kids to not be able to have their cell phones at school, or telling communities that their concerns about their kids' safety aren't all important around speed limit changes by schools, telling the disabled community and those who live and work with them that their needs aren't important, loosening gun laws despite opposition from the police and public, getting rid of smoke-free laws despite opposition from the health officials and the public, cutbacks to hospital builds around the country, again despite public feedback and issues from the health professionals, cancelling pay equity to pay landlord tax cuts despite that being really unpopular, and changes to health and safety and workers' rights despite opposition from worker rights groups. But there is a fascinating nanny state attitude that seems to be popping up towards local government as well. This government seems to think that the only votes that are important are the ones that people gave them specifically at the last general election. And we can see that with how they keep targeting local government and changes, which means that the decisions made at a local level are overridden by central government, showing that as far as they're concerned, the public's vote in local elections isn't worth the paper it's written on. Take the latest announcement. The Minister for Housing can step in and alter a council's decision around housing if he doesn't agree with the outcome, saying that the decisions from councils he doesn't like stop economic growth. We've seen from their fast-track process that past decisions from councils, iwi, and environmental protection groups, and more, are what they consider a limit to economic growth, which means in this instance, he could be looking at stopping local decisions around climate change mitigation made by local authorities based on feedback and outreach that they do in their communities and expert advice on their communities of interest. We saw the overwhelming majority of submissions and a whole bunch of councils involved with this around opposing the referenda on Māori wards, which included Canterbury Regional Council, who have 2 spots put aside for Ngāi Tahu under the Ngāi Tahu Representation Act 2022 to ensure mana whenua representation in the decision-making processes that the council undertakes. But despite local decision-making processes in place, overwhelming advice from those involved and experts on representation and the treaty, the government still forced it through, forcing expensive referenda onto a bunch of councils this year. They forced councils to take back water infrastructure and costs and then vilified councils for having to increase rates to cover the costs that they were forced to take on, and then removed elements of the Local Government Act around wellbeing provisions for communities, because they saw this as a nice to have. They saw it as wasteful. The wellbeing of communities is wasteful, so they overruled it. And the RSB could also be used to push these kind of nanny state changes, because it can be retrospective, especially since it's designed to focus on the needs of businesses over the needs of communities and completely ignores the treaty and is based around the standard of quote-unquote good lawmaking put forward by David Seymour, seen here with former party president and convicted child sex offender Tim Jago, who this week had his lawyer argue it was unfair to say he had sexually offended against children since only one victim was under the age of 16 at the time. Principles, huh? And the excuse they seem to use every time is, we have a mandate, this is what the people voted for. But people also vote for local decisions to be made locally for their local councils and local authorities to focus on their homes and set priorities of their communities. By overriding local decision-making processes because of what one bunch of right-wing politicians think is important, no matter the expense it has on people's lives, it shows a disdain for the voters who didn't choose to do exactly what the government wants to do. And that's dangerous. But it is another reminder that this year's local body elections are so important to get involved in. We need as many people to vote as possible for candidates who are able to stand up to changes that the government is forcing that remove local representation, ignore local needs, and tries to undo local communities so that their donors can build whatever cash cows they like in the name of economic growth. Hey, thanks for checking out today's video. Make sure you like, share, subscribe so you get more updates as we go along and deal with these guys for the rest of the year.